All right. Welcome everybody to Canhammer TV, live tonight from my basement. It is February 16th, 2023, and tonight we are doing Custodes Tactica episode 70. 70. It's pretty crazy. Spanning editions, spanning meta changes. It is eternal, like the Emperor. And custodians to protect the Emperor. So that's the theme of tonight, protection. And tonight's theme is, of course, the humble warden, which is so hot right now that we're going to talk about it for a whole episode. Now, we have done unit focus on wardens before. That was, I don't know, long time ago when we went through every single unit in the book and had a whole episode for each unit. So you can check that. It would be interesting to go back and watch that now in relation to now, because the wardens have changed a little bit over time, and we'll try and touch on that as we go. Let me know if the sound is okay. People are in the chat. By the way, if you're just joining us, please feel free to join our Discord here. This is the Canhammer Discord. This houses the Custodes Collective, which of course is, I would say, the best Custodes community online. And we've had a lot of new people join recently, which is great. Custodes are doing fairly well right now. If GW's metrics are to be believed, we are like the third best faction. Of course, their metrics are not to be believed necessarily, but we're doing pretty good, and these guys are part of that. And so we're going to talk about that tonight because it's very topical. Feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you feel like supporting us, please join as a member. There's no obligation to. You can chat for free, ask questions as you like. We'll answer them as we go. There is a poll up. I hope you can see that. We've already had 5 votes, so I think people can see it. But there is a poll on the chat, which is, which list should I play against Francois Iron Hands on Tuesday night, which will be live, of course, here. And the slightly modified from last time double Warden Brick Solar Watch list, or my new hotness Dread Host Bike Hurricane Bolter Spam list. You heard it here first, live on the internet. So that both those lists are actually up on the Discord under the Darren's Current List channel. So one of them is just the official list, and the other is that concept list. So have a vote. I'll keep the poll going the whole show, and we'll cap it at the end of the night and see what people have decided. Okay, so before we go into Wardens, let's just update about Canhammer Team Tournament. Of course, Canhammer Team Tournament coming up April 1st, 2nd. So that is coming up in 6 weeks, 7 weeks. The refund deadline is getting close. We are full at 32 teams, although we have lots of people on the wait list. It's getting to around the point where people start to drop out. So, and of course, we need to have whole teams. But if you are a single player and you want to be a sub when we need single players, then please let us know. And the room block is probably closing soon, and I'm going to start asking for dietary restrictions and things like that. So do keep an eye on the event page for the CHTT 2023. We'll be putting these things out on there, as well as to the captains in the captain's chat. And yeah, so that's coming up soon. Everything is good to go for it, basically. And yeah, so we'll keep people updated. Of course, on Canhammer TV, the week of live, we'll be doing rolling the missions, as well as doing the first round pairings live and announcing grudges on that show. That's always a fun show, so do tune in for that. Okay, so Wardens. Wardens are everywhere. Why? Why are they everywhere? Well, partly because Liam won a big event with Warden Bricks, but Wardens have been around, but where have they been is the question. We'll see if we can recap some of their history. Now, I haven't, if I was smart, I would have kept all my old codexes as they went along, and then we could always go back and track the history of things. But yeah, it takes too much effort and, recycling. But we'll try and recap things. First, we'll talk about the model. So, of course, the Warden model looks very similar to all other Custodes models. See if we can get this to focus here. Focus. Focus. No focus. Okay, anyway, and except that it has the pointy helmet. The face mask is a little bit different. And they got togas, or these robes. They are different in that way, basically. So, you know, I think they're actually cooler than Guardian models, to be honest. I like the heads with the kind of winged pointy bits, and I do like the togas. And of course, you can model them with axes or spears. And this is my favorite sculpt out of all of them, which is the one where he's holding up the axe and he has his Misericordia out with the empty scabbard at the back. So this is my favorite Warden pose, this guy. And of course, in the Wardens, you can make a Vexilla. And to be honest, if you have these guys with spears, you could easily sub them as Guardians or vice versa, to be honest. But anyway, nobody really knows, you know. Although Custodes is more played these days, some people might notice more. But in the old days, nobody knew what model you were using or if it was WYSIWYG. Nobody knew anything. Okay. So, Wardens. So when they first came out, they were lackluster because they were too expensive. They weren't quite as good as Terminators, and they weren't as cheap as Guard. And they weren't troops. They didn't have OBSEC. You had to pay 5 point extra for Misericordia, which was mandatory equipment. So that actually made them more expensive. And then, of course, back then it was spears and axes were different costs. And, you know, the bodyguard rule wasn't a big deal. 6 of funeral pain back then, you know, like that's nice, but you know, there wasn't as much crazy damage back then. So there wasn't, you know, elite slot. There wasn't a lot, and they had no particular strats that were just for them. They really didn't have an identity, and so they were just stuck between, you know, Guardians and Terminators for a long time. Now, if you look back many years ago now to when Nick Nanavati first started Brown Magic, and I was one of his early kind of clients, and he actually played that was back when like Knights was kicking ass, like Knights were everywhere, and I got him to play a Custodes game against Knights on his stream, and he came up with a list with 10 Wardens in it, and he won that game on his stream with a single block of 10 Wardens. And so that's the first time I saw 10 blocks of Wardens. I never played that list for whatever reason. And then, you know, you've just never seen Wardens. They came and went here and there. You might see them occasionally. And then kind of things have changed over time. You know, they've gone down slowly in cost, moving away, but Alaris have come down. You know, Wardens have come down. Guardians, everybody's gone down, so they're still stuck in the middle. But now, basically, with their points being equivalent and axes and spears being the same, and, you know, a lot of things have gone into making them worth playing. And so we're going to go over some of those reasons. Just to quickly summarize, I mean, most people know Wardens have they're elite. They have the traditional Custodes stat line. They have 3 wounds, but they have 4 attacks and, you know, 2 up save. They do have a 6 up feel no pain, and they have the bodyguard rule, which for a short period of time was super abused because you could stand behind a rune and bodyguard Trajan standing in front of the rune. That quickly got stomped on, so now basically you can just look out Sir with only 1 model in the unit. So, you know, they that kind of stuff got stupid, and so they cut that out. So the bodyguard rule is, yeah, you know, it's fine, but it's no longer a big feature of them. So that's kind of their main data sheet. Not very long ago, they actually had their own stratagem to let them deny psychic powers. That lasted for a while, but you know, that's gone now. And so that's their main data sheet. They can, of course, use spear or axe, which are now the same cost. I would say most people actually have theirs modeled with axes because that was how they were different from Guardians before. But people may have magnetized them or whatever. And that's the same cost now. And of course, Misericorders are now free. So that's a big part too, because paying 5 extra points for something you had to take back then was like pretty crappy. So shout out on the stream. We got Joe Sweat and Sikronos. Welcome. Synchronos is saying, yeah, so when they came out, the Misericordia optional ninth gave them the bodyguard rule. Can you possible to make the guard Vexilla with a weapon, not just a shield? It's been years since I built my models. I really don't know, but you could just sub the models in and out when you're holding the Vexilla. So I have magnetized my actual Vexilla banners, and so I could use whatever model I want for the Vexilla, whatever weapon I want. I even have one that just has a dagger. So, if you magnetize, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, and I think the actual Vexilla shape is different on the Warden kit than the Guardian kit, and so you can have two different Vexillas for what that's worth. They had no roll, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The other thing to note, and this is one of the reasons why we're seeing 10-man bricks of Wardens, is because it's one of our few units that can go to 10-man. So Guardians can go to 10-man, Wardens can go to 10-man. You used to be able to take Terminators to 10-man, but now it's 6 only. Venatari can only go to 6. Bikes can go high still, but there's a ton of points. And not even not even the sisters can go to 10. Funnily enough, I was just looking at that. So it's one of few things that can go to 10, and it's a ton of points, 500 points. But if you wanted a brick and you're gonna go full brick, you can go full brick with Wardens. So that's one reason why, if you're gonna run a brick, you're thinking maybe Wardens. Why else? So, as we mentioned, you don't have to pay for daggers anymore. Everybody's got daggers though, so that's no longer like a huge, that's no longer like a big thing that Wardens get daggers when nobody else does. One of the big reasons that we saw Wardens coming right back right now was that they got their OBSEC back in the latest data slate. So that was one of the reasons. Without OBSEC, I think the Warden brick is not even close to being as good as it is. So OBSEC back, obviously good, and of course they count as 2, so that's a big unit of spreading OBSEC around. So that is good, and even on the game last week, it was useful even to be able to put one Warden on a objective to hold that objective. Can be key, especially with a fast list like a Solar Watch list or like a EI or something like that. So being OBSEC obviously is good. The second major recent change that made them even in the running of being used like this is the new Arts of Omen detachments. So now that we don't have to take at least one unit of Guardians in order to unlock a bunch of elites, and we don't have to pay 3 CP to use a bunch of elites, now we can just use Wardens. And so while there are still some things that work better with troops, like mostly secondary play, we don't have to have that tax troop unit anymore. So that is another big reason why you can afford to play 2 big blocks of Wardens and still have all your Terminators and stuff and have plenty of elite slots. But you could not do that with a patrol before, and to run a Vanguard was going to cost you CP. So I think that's a big reason why why you start seeing these big Warden bricks. They've steadily gotten cheaper over time, and so now they're at the price point where, especially with no paying for daggers and no paying for axes, you can get basically a Guardian but with a Funeral Pain and an extra attack with an axe for the same cost as a shield dude. Now, spear dude is still cheaper than a Warden, and a Warden with a spear too. So there is that price difference, but we're talking in a Custodes list where you usually have 60, 70 points left over at the end with nothing to do with it. Those small little points don't really do anything to our list. In fact, I wish they would just AOS our list, AOS it, where we just have these blocks, and then it would just kind of just work out the same for that. We wouldn't even feel that change. But anyway, so the slow price gap shrinking between Guardians and Wardens have made them a sub-in for Wardens, and in fact right now 10 Guard and 10 Wardens is a straight sub, same points. So, and they're just that little bit cheaper enough than Terminators that it makes a difference in a large group. Of course, Terminators can only go to 6, but it's just cheap enough. It was 2 points cheaper than Terminator you're starting to think, if you weren't planning on running 10-man, still that argument is kind of going on if you're not running the big brick, but the price point is just about right for our army and how we build armies, along with the changes to detachment structure. Joe Sweat says, do you think taking one finger block of 10 Wardens is worth it? Seems like you got to build the list around that style. So that's what we're talking about tonight, Joe. We're talking about the Warden kind of brick list, which is what we're talking about and what kind of brought the whole Warden to everybody's attention. Now, people are trying all sorts of different numbers of Wardens, but the Warden brick is really why we're talking about it right now. I think if you, like with any 10-man unit in the Custodes, because of how the break points of the CPs work, and how CPs are fairly limited now, starting with 6, and then you add all your warlord traits and everything with it, I think you either run a min unit and save on CP, like 3 or 4, depending on which stratagems you think you're going to take, or you run big, so you get the bang for your buck for CP, at least 8, I would say. That kind of 5 to 7 range seems like a no man's land, although I think 4 to 5 is okay, because if you lose one, now you're down to 4. I think, I think that's okay. Okay. The other reason why we're seeing Wardens is because they have the option of running axes. And so you can choose spear versus axes, and that's a whole other episode, and that's been debated for many, many, many years. And the argument will change depending on what people are trying to kill. But, axe versus spears, now it's like a free decision, not really a points matter. And I just use axes because I'm not changing all my models. But I like strength 8. The -2 AP does suck, and now axes don't have the extra AP stratagem anymore. But strength 8 is nice, and the extra attack definitely kind of helps with that negative factor. And some people, like Nick in the Discord, has been running Dread Host with a whole bunch of axes, and that extra AP makes them now 8 -3, and so that's pretty good. Of course, we all remember the complaining we all did when we found out that axes weren't going to be 3 damage. But anyway, water under the bridge. Okay. But strength 8 is just good. When I was playing Phil, ruining everything on 2s with Trajan around for reroll 1s, that was super nice. Okay. So another reason that axes are kind of acceptable as well is the loss of Armor of Contempt, although -2 still on a 2-up save when it takes you to 4-up save. But, I think, it's better, obviously. Everybody got better without that. So flat 2, obviously better than D3. Now, this was a change a long time ago with the new book, but, it's got to be said that the flat damage is way better than the D3, although there's less spikiness. I think if you were going to run bigger units, running 5 or 6 sucks. And so people, until all these other changes also came around, would never look at a Brick of Wardens because it wasn't worth the CP. We were really forced into an MSU style due to the nature of our strats and how they get more expensive with larger groups. And then there's a little bit of blast kind of thing and whatever. I don't think that's a huge deal, but there was reasons not to run big bricks. But now if you're going to run bigger units, you might as well run big units. And so that's why the kind of brick thing came around. Okay. So I was doing some math the other night on Avenge the Fallen. So I used Avenge the Fallen a couple of times on the last game last week to pretty good effect. Maybe one time wasn't that good, but I used it to pretty good effect at a point when I'd lost maybe 1 or 2 guys, and that allowed me to split my attacks and get more bang for my buck when splitting. Because if you got a big brick of guys, unless you're trying to roll something huge, you probably can afford to split 3 or 4 guys onto different targets, or like split up. And you're probably going to have to anyway, just because you want to cover ground, and then there's like coherency and stuff like that. You probably got to have 1 guy back just to make sure you're in your reroll range or Vexilla range or whatever. So you probably end up splitting. And in a couple of games I've played with the Warden Brick, that's definitely what you end up doing. you want to make your groups of 3 or 4 guys, or even 2 guys, a little bit more effective. And so I did some math on Avenge. So doing a 10-man group that's undamaged, you do 40 attacks. With Avenge, at 9-man, you actually do 45 attacks. So losing 1 guy, you actually end up doing 5 extra attacks in total. Losing 2 guys, so you're down to 8 guys, you are now back at 40 attacks. So you're good all the way down to losing 2 guys with Avenge. Then at 7, you're starting to lose efficiency. You're down to 35 attacks at 7. I mean, that's better than, that's better than 28 attacks. But and then at 6, you're down to 30, 5, you're down to 30, 4, you're down to 24. So, even with the +2, while it does help, definitely, so when you're down to half, 30, you're still at 30. So it helps offset the loss between 6 guys left and 5 guys left. You maintain 30 attacks, but it definitely doesn't get you. It's still pretty good. You're still at 3/4 of your full strength at half strength. So I think Avenge is something really nice to use on large bricks at whatever level, and definitely has some, definitely if you really want to hit something hard, 2 guys is like the maximum. Now that's easy math. I'm not saying I'm a genius for having done that, but just to put it out there. Okay. So the other thing we want to talk about is board coverage. So if you're running a 10-man block, they take up space. Focus. They do take up space, and it'll focus eventually. And so, oh, by the way, I don't know if anybody out there is watching at 1080p, 60, whatever, FPS or whatever. But I changed all the stream settings and updated my video drivers, and I'm running on hardware encoding now. Took me like 2 hours to figure that out. And so I didn't realize we were streaming only at 70. So hopefully it actually looks a lot better at this level. At this kind of quality level. I hope that. Okay, I gotta fix this focus business here. There we go. Okay. So coherency versus coverage. So at 10-man, you do have the extra bit of coherency that you have to maintain, but you still have a much bigger footprint. And remember, we got 40mm bases, and a coherency is 2 inches. So you can still cover a lot of space with double offset guys and tag a lot of things and stay in auras and just generally take up space. So I think that 10-man, being able to play 10-man does give you a lot of play in terms of board coverage, something that we generally lack. And then of course there's the extra threat range of heroic intervention with the stratagem. So, I think that's also another reason why a big brick might be played versus small units. The auric weapons is another kind of bonus for Wardens. So their axes and their spears are auric weapons, and so you could double tap with the kata. And strength 4 is not great, but it does work. -1, not super good, but into the right targets it does work. And 2 damage is excellent. And so actually on like a marine unit with 3-up save going to 4-up save, like that does a lot of work. It kills a bunch of marines. In 2-up armor, or if they have cover, it does less work, but still kill a few people. And rapid fire and then doing it twice, like you could put out a lot of firepower with a 10-man brick of Wardens double shooting 2-shot each auric weapons. So that is definitely one nice thing about big bricks. Now obviously if you have 3 units of 3 guys, it's the same thing, but I'm just saying that's a thing that feels good when you pick up that many dice with 1 unit shooting. Defensive strats. The defensive strats, you have to plan around it. So if you're running big bricks, you got to plan that you need CP. So generally, I would say 4 CP starting CP, so 5 in the first turn, like, is the minimum. Maybe 3 if you're conservative or you're not planning on taking much fire or combat damage in the first turn or 2. But yeah, so you don't want to be spamming 5 or 6 CP on your characters in this building. And so definitely at 4 CP last game, I thought that was okay. Especially if you can get one back every round from Trajan, if you're running Trajan. 4 CP kind of minimum, because you're spending at least a couple of CP every time you want to do something on them. You really got to do the math in your head when something is attacking or what's going to be attacking for the rest of the phase, if you should transhuman or Old Spice, because it's going to cost you more in the long run, and you maybe want to do it multiple phases. So that was another reason, by the way, that we seeing big bricks now, because we can actually use our strats more than one time. So if you invested 1,000 points in 20 Wardens and you could only use Old Spice once and transhuman once, you're basically just wasted your points. So that was another big reason that we saw the brick become a possibility, is because those restrictions were gone. And so, but you do have to plan to have more CP around to protect them and be very, so like last week's game, there was a number of times when I decided not to use Old Spice and just use Transhuman, because, even they were hitting on 2s, using Old Spice wasn't a huge deal. There was no wound rerolls. So you have to do all that kind of math in your head to decide. If you want to do both stratagems, that's 4 CP. That is a ton. So, it's not, yeah. So yeah. Now, the other thing to remember is the kata with the no rerolls to hit in combat. I can't remember what that was. Captaris? I can't remember the names. But that's a useful thing to have. So then you may not need to Old Spice at all if you're in that kata, or you could hit that kata specifically if you're going to be into combat, with like a bunch of rerolling hit guys. So keep that in mind as well, but because that's a thing to turn off hit rerolls. And then you got Transhuman, and then you're kind of decent. And then you, like everybody else in our army, you got to be decent at rolling 4-ups. So the Feel No Pain. So for a long time, the Feel No Pain was like, is it good? Is it not? It's only 6-up. It's kind of shitty. There wasn't so much like crazy multi-damage out there. Now everything is like 2+ something multi-damage. Like everything went really crazy, right? 3 wounds, 4 wounds without a Feel No Pain could survive Melta back then without the new rules. But now it's like that Feel No Pain has come in clutch a lot. And, it really decreases the efficiency of multi-damage shots. Damage, like hits, killing a dude. So if you just make 1 Feel No Pain on a 3 damage, now it's taken up a total of 2 of those. If you're lucky, 2 or 3 2 damage hits. If you're really lucky, you might survive the odd Melta. It's pretty unlikely, but like especially Melta without not within half range. So it definitely, the 6-up Feel No Pain these days does help. It would be really awesome if it's 5-up, but anyway. Whereas in the old days, it was just like, I didn't really need 6-up Feel No Pain. But, in the games I've played so far, it literally is the difference between losing, say, 3 guys and only losing 2 guys, and maybe the 3rd guy takes like a wound or something. So it does help from time to time. It's not something you can rely on, but it does take that odd sting off of these kind of things. And if you make some good 4-ups and you make some good 6s here and there, you can get lucky and do pretty good. Obviously, you can't rely on saving 6s, but it does help now and again to save the odd guy. And you save 1 guy, that's like another 4 attacks, maybe more with the Venge. That's another double offset guy that stays on an objective. It does make a difference, especially when you're putting it all into these bricks. So it does make a difference. I think somebody before has done the math between 6-up Feel No Pain and like Shield on Guardians. I don't know. I'm not good at math, but yeah. Okay. I think that the big bricks have also brought the Vexilla back. I think the Vexilla was less. It really dropped off the map in our recent MSU playstyle because the Vexilla itself doesn't do a lot of damage or anything. Like the dude is not as good as a captain. He's a little bit better than like a guardian. He's a character. And then the Vexilla itself, -1 to hit with the capped, modifiers. And then you can't cover all your MSU units. The Vexilla kind of fell off a lot recently. But with the big Warden bricks, I think the Vexilla brings a lot. First of all, it carries Warlock traits for the Warlock bricks. So a lot of people playing Solar Watch, for example, with Warden bricks, and that carries your Sally Forth. Giving it that extra protection, you seem to get more bang for your buck from a -1 or a +1 or a +1 attack because it's like a bigger unit of dudes and it's easier to stay within range of that big unit. And of course, Wardens can protect the Vexilla, but I think you just seem like you get more bang for your buck. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. I've toyed with the idea of running double Vex, and certainly the -1 hit with the +1 attack, because like 5 attack Wardens sounds pretty spicy to me. But I don't know. That's the next iteration, I think, is I'm going to go double Vex. But we'll see. The Vex is pretty cheap in terms of our characters too, so I think it's brought the Vexilla back into play a little bit. Anything you can do to kind of make your 500-point investment a little bit harder to kill. So, it's not that expensive, the Vexilla. Okay. So one thing that we've seen is that it does maybe make some secondaries kind of viable. So grind them down was kind of tricky with MSU style because you would lose units at a greater rate, and so you wouldn't end up grinding. I found it difficult to grind. That was kind of a default pick for a long time because we were hard to kill, but it become harder to grind, especially as things got more killy. And terrain levels have increased, and so you can never always guarantee that you could easily grind. And so now that you have less smaller units and 2 giganto blocks, and if you've played the 10 Wardens, they're actually pretty hard to kill if you have the CP. I think, it does make grind more viable. You have to be careful how you throw your other small units around because you easily lose grind, like your single Terminators and stuff like that. But I think it does make grind a little bit more viable. In the same vein, it maybe makes our grind, what's our called? Might of Terror or something? Stand Vigil? Somebody saying Stand Vigil? Okay, maybe. I can't remember which one our called. The Custodes grind. It does make that a little bit more viable. Still not great. I wouldn't pick grind or that one as your first pick secondaries, but it does make them a little bit more palatable to take. So that's another advantage of big, hard to kill brick. Okay. The other thing is, I think that Custodes grind is the Might of Terror. Yeah, Might of Terror. Okay, the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that I think the Warden brick actually plays well with many of our shield hosts. And you can't necessarily say that about all of our units or list archetypes. So, like fast bikes, Venetaris, and that plays really nicely into EI. EC is a general good one for all, but it was really good with MSU because of the rerolls. And, Solar Watch definitely is nice with big units because they're not so cumbersome, especially if they're foot-based units. And so they can really move up. Like last game, I made the mistake of not moving up, but I could have been in mid-board turn 1 and charging into the middle. And that's not something you can easily do with foot Custodes. So it does blend nicely, especially where something like Sally Forth only affects 1 unit. I believe it used to be an aura, but so it does make that kind of thing more bang for your buck, add mobility to a bricky kind of list. And then fallback and charge is nice too in Solar Watch. So I think that's why you're seeing a lot of Solar Watch Warden bricks, is because people have discovered that kind of pseudo mobility that it gives you, that the traits of Solar Watch gives you. Now, shout out to Chris. Chris, Canhammer Chris, he was playing Solar Watch a long time ago. And actually he saw some of that tech in Solar Watch, but not with Warden bricks, but just in terms of like the usual MSU, but with Solar Watch. So he was playing that a long time ago, and I never saw it. And but now I definitely see how it could be good. And definitely, I think it does go well with brick Wardens. The Nick has been playing a lot of Dreadhost, and I think Dreadhost works pretty well, especially if you want to deep strike a unit with the reroll and with the charge, and then the extra AP, as we already said, on axes, super good. Extra AP on auric weapons makes them much better. Even extra AP on Misericordia makes it much better. So like that extra AP is pretty spicy. You got 40 attacks with exploding sixes. Dreadhost is definitely something that people should look at. It's one of few sources of a 3 damage weapon that we have. That axe. It's a shame not to take it if you're going to play Dreadhost. But anyway, so I think, the Warden brick has played in Dreadhost. I even toyed with these bricks in Aquiline Shield, just to make big bricks of hitty, tough to kill dudes who could heroic intervention 6 inches. So like your whole army could threaten an extra 6 inches with a bunch of axe bearing Wardens. So I think that could work. It's just that a good opponent's going to play around the HI if they can. And so maybe has less flow than the other shield hosts, but it might be a thing that somebody should try. Maybe I'll try it at one point. So would it play in emissaries? For sure it would play in emissaries. I mean, your bricks are always fight first, and they ignore modifiers. Like, okay, that depends on what you're doing with them, but always fight first on big bricks, obviously nice. Because especially if you're tapping multiple units with your big brick, always fighting first is super nice, because otherwise, so always fighting first, always good. So I think it actually works in emissaries. You could pre-game move one of those units if you really wanted to, although that cost you a bunch of CP. I think that's the other thing about a big brick of beefy guys, is it actually plays well into a lot of our shield hosts. And so that's what we're seeing, people trying different things out. Okay. So that's kind of what I see as a lot of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of 10-man bricks of Wardens these days, 1 or 2. I actually saw a 30 Warden list, and I think Chris at the most recent tournament that he went to tried 27 Wardens, like 987 or something like that. And he said that was too many. That was too many. I think 10 to 20 is the key. Next thing I want to try maybe sub out a Guardian unit for a Warden unit, so because they're the same points. But I think 30 is too many, but probably 20 is like a sweet spot. Because you want other units to do other things. So we'll talk about the list in a second. So some of the downsides, I mean, it's still axes, still just AP2, although as we talked about, there are ways to mitigate that. Still only 2 damage. It would be nice if it was 3, but 2 damage. But when you're putting in a ton of 2 damage, it's still okay. I wish we really had that strat to increase the AP, but there we go. And the biggest disadvantage, I guess, is that you need CP. So you can't spam on relics and traits and things like that. It makes, if you're going to run Trajan, like it makes a biker cat, like maybe just one of those characters now instead of a couple. So you do have to make trade-offs to fuel the defensive strats for your big bricks. Morale actually could come into play. It's still really stupid that we even can fail morale as Custodes. That's still a thing that I don't like. 11 leadership definitely helps, but you could technically still fail morale now, which would really suck. So so that's definitely a rare downside that it could have. Okay, so the current list that I'm playing, and if I play this next week, this is what I'll be playing. So far, the poll, if you want to vote, the poll is at 10 votes, 50-50 right now. So we need some tiebreakers on the poll, what I'm supposed to play on Tuesday. So my current list, again, if you want to look at in the Discord, the Darren's current list channel, the list is in there. So right now, so originally I started off with where's my original list? Okay, I started off with Trajan, a Blade Champ, because I just wanted to see how you do with Solar Watch. You know, give it the extra +1 to charge if he goes in first. Everyone else can like charging along, and so I wanted to try out the Blade Champ. And then I had the Vexilla with the Magnifica and the Sally Forth and Castellan's Mark. I had 2 units of 3 Spear Venetaris. I had 3 individual Terminators, and I had 20 Wardens. And I had a unit of Witch Seekers because I had like 60 points left. So that was the list, and I played against Phil, and I liked that list. I lost. I mean, watch that stream. So just in case you didn't watch, there was turn 3, I think, in a charge phase, my second 10-man unit of Wardens to engage and kill a whole bunch of to clear the middle of the board, basically. All the Sandguard, the Priest, all that stuff was going to disappear with this charge. So first, the Sisters, to clear for a 4-point swing, to clear a unit in our backfield, rolled Snake Eyes. Then they re-rolled that, because it was a 4-point swing, so re-rolled that into a 3. And then the Blade Champ charged in and rolled Boxcars. And then the Wardens needed 4-inch with the +1 from the Blade Champ and rolled Snake Eyes. So I worked it out, and I asked some math people I know to check the math. That sequence of 4 rolls, a 2, a 3, a 12, and then a 2 again, is 1 in 879,808 chance. It's pretty good. Anyway, so after people who were in the chat who saw that, it was nice. So after that, I made some changes to the list. So I dropped the Blade Champ. I mean, the Blade Champ I've tried maybe 2 or 3 times now. I haven't even painted it because he's not impressed me at all. And I wanted more mobility in Venetari for objective play, because the 2 bricks kind of going up the middle. I mean, that was pretty much like a 6 objective mission, but they were kind of spread all along, so it's still pretty hard. So I basically made some changes. So now I only have Trajan, and then I have the Vexilla, and he's now running Imperious for shits and giggles, and Sally Forth, and I think I gave him the Castellans, and then I also running 3 units of Vens now with Lances, because they were just really good, as always. And then 3 single units of Alaris, maybe to do BEL, although I paid the price for getting them too easily killed. But I think you play it based on your opponent for behind enemy lines, and or to just sit on an objective and do actions or whatever. So they're really good for that, and often, like I said, you got like 60 points left over. What are you going to do with it? So run an Alaris. And so that is the current list that I'll be playing on Tuesday. And so I think if to go with your Wardens, Venetari is really nice. First of all, they do synergize with Solar Watch nicely, especially the fallback in charge, because they fall back 12, and that's super good. And then they can also shoot with the fallback and shoot fly stratagem. I can't remember what it's called, but that makes a unit of Venetari super helpful. I wish they could also use the bike 6-inch consolidate stratagem. Like, I wish that was fly too, but anyway. So I think the Venetari just fill the role that the Wardens need to accompany them, which is fast, mobile, fly obsec that has decent shooting and decent melee as well with the lances. I really like the lances right now. And then I still got the Vex. I'm trying out the Imperious just for fun. I probably regret it. I probably need Magnifica, especially if I'm playing against heavy shooting Marines. Maybe I'll switch it. I don't know. Whatever. We'll see. And then, as I said, the 3 single Alaris, such good little Swiss Army knives. And then Trajan. So I kept Trajan because in that game, reroll 1s to wound, especially at strength 8 on T4, was definitely clutch. And although Trajan ended up biting it in an unfortunate sequence of rolls, he wouldn't have otherwise. Trajan's always been the man for me. And so with the rerolls and then the CP regen, he's been good. So he's now the only HQ, but I could easily sub him out for, say, a shield cap on bike, which would really be nice in the Solar Watch list, although you end up spending more CP. And if you're not going to spend all the CP on him, then maybe he's less durable and less worth it, but we'll see. So Trajan's still in, and so that's the current list. Yeah, Synchronos. I think I might stuff the Magnifica back in, but I don't want to necessarily tailor. I maybe want to try the Imperious. I don't know. We'll see. I'll sleep on it. Okay, so that's the current list. Okay, so keep voting on the poll. Ask your questions in chat if you have any. We're going to go to the question page on the Discord and go. So here we are. So best loadout for Wardens. So again, I don't want to go into the whole spear axe thing. I'm just using axes right now. I really like strength 8, and that's what they're modeled with, and I can't be bothered to remodel them. So yeah, I think you could use whatever you like, actually, depending maybe on meta mostly, your local meta, and or just magnetize, and then you can swap them in and out. You could mix also, but that's just a pain in the butt. Like, it's just you're just making your own game slower. So I wouldn't mix. Oh, there were questions. Yeah, sorry before that. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Funk, how do you feel about MSU Wardens? Yeah, so I mean, if you're running the old MSU style, so you're not gonna run a brick, you could run 3 Wardens MSU, but like, I don't know. I feel like just 3 shield guys is probably better, like slightly harder to kill, and troops for secondaries. So I think they're less compelling if you're not going to run a brick. If you wanted to run bricks, does it need to be 20 plus or single? So we already talked about that. I think you could just run 10, and then but if you're just running 110 and no other bricks, you need to give your opponent other things to preoccupy them, or else everything just goes into that brick and that's it. And the other thing is, if you just run brick and you spend all your CP on that, now you got nothing else CP for anybody else. So keep that in mind. Do you think Warden bricks can work outside Solar Watch? So we covered that already. What is the nuance between playing very aggressive and cagey? I don't know if that question is specifically for this kind of list or just in general. I mean, in general, I think most people play how they want to play, whether that's right or wrong. I mean, so take Phil, for example. Phil has tried very hard over the years to not play how he wants to play, which is to go straight in. And so for him to hold back last game and not go in after I didn't go in took, you don't know how much willpower and like people's faces appearing in his little cloud thought bubble that took for him to do that, because I thought that he was going in. I thought he was coming to me. I would clear it and then go forward. So you don't know how much that took for Phil not to do that, and he probably won because of it. So and I lost for not going in. So I think that's just a good example. People will play how they want to play, and they maybe tend to pick armies that go towards that. So Synchronos, he is literally building World Eaters right now as we talk. So that's gonna go right up his alley. And so hopefully we'll see that on the channel soon once that gets done. With the brick, I think you don't need to go all in. Now, last game was a bad example. I should have gone a little bit more aggressive than I did. But I think if you're in the middle, you don't need to go any further than that. The old adage where you hold 3 in a triangle in the middle and you just contest everything else, I think that still applies for big bricks and maybe makes those units harder to kill. Okay, worst counter for Wardens. I don't think there's any specific counter. Anything that kills Custodes will also kill Wardens. But the thing is that now you can focus all your defensive strats on this one unit if they're going to put everything into that one unit, and you're going to really blunt their attack. But I don't think there's any particular thing that's particularly bad for Wardens over anything else. Obviously, anything doing more than 3 damage will basically negate the Feel No Pain. So that's one thing, but that would negate any other Custodian anyway. So the fact that you even have a chance to survive 2 and 3 damage is the benefit of the Feel No Pain. So, okay, order of operate. Oh, I asked for clarification. Okay, are they the panacea they're presented as? Well, no, I don't think they're a panacea. I don't think we have any panaceas. I think they're just another bit of tech for all the reasons we just spent the last 45 minutes talking about why people are playing them now. Best units to run alongside them. So I think we covered that. I think Venatari is a really good unit, really to run beside anything we have. Bikes would be another option, although they're way more expensive. But Venatari just really good OBSEC, infantry. Them getting OBSEC back made them like one of the best units in our book. So Venatari definitely good. So fear of running them up in multiple bricks is that you'll misplay, pump CP into one, and then lose the other. So I think you just have to decide, like I said, at the time, what is your opponent going to do? So if you saw the game I played against Phil, I really only gave him 1 brick at a time to attack. So you just put your CP into that unit. If he wants to take the odd pot shot in the other unit, whatever. You save your CP for the big unit that's in the thick of it. If you're going to put both your bricks up to the front, I mean, you just have to see what's going to hit them and decide what needs attack, or split it. You know, one gets transhuman, one gets Old Spice, depending on what's going to attack them. So, you know, the fact that we can, you know, use Old Spice more than once is like great, but, you know, you just have to make those play decisions. The fear that you will leave one complete undefended, that does happen. I mean, you have to look at how much CP you got left and kind of make those decisions. Okay. Captaris, no rerolls. Yeah, I think Captaris, no rerolls is really key, actually, to keep in mind. Also, in the list that we're all copying, what are the expectations? So I think we covered that. They're there to play the mission. Venatari is really good at that, and everybody else to support your bricks. So, and a single Alaris Terminators are really useful little guys to do all sorts of things. So, yeah, don't forget to play the mission. Ryan says, are Wardens prepared to welcome their new World Eater overlords? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe not. But we'll see. I'm sure Phil would like to run over us with his new World Eaters. So we will be seeing that hopefully soon. Come on, Phil, get working. Would Wardens still be worth taking if they went up 5 points per model? I don't think so, actually. You put them up 5, now they're 55, and Alaris are 60. And Guardians with spears, you know, a lot cheaper now. Even shields are cheaper by 5. I mean, that's 50 points, so that's like 1 lost Alaris. You know, I think 5 points actually may make the difference for the Wardens, because 5 points made the difference the other way around. I think it would make a difference. It maybe won't stop you playing 1 10-man, but it would definitely stop you playing 20, I think. And then things like, you know, we're already thinking, should we just straight swap some Shield Guard 10-man in for a Warden 10-man? I think you might end up doing that, because you lose a little bit of offensive output, but you gain durability. You got troops now, you know, because troop is still a thing. So, yeah, so I think if they went up 5, then, you know, they would drop down for sure. Okay, everybody. Thank you very much for joining tonight. Thank you for participating in the chat. Thank you for voting. It's actually 50-50. The vote has ended. And so I will decide what I want to play. It will probably be the Solar Watch Warden list. I want to play it a few more times before I try some craziness. and I think the Iron Hands list will just blow my bikes off the table in about 2 turns. So we'll see. We will see. But thank you for joining, watching, liking, following, subscribing. Consider joining. Join the Discord. Thank you very much for tuning in, everybody, and I hope you have a good night.